All right. Today we're talking about space and time and why it's not real. And I don't mean not real in the experiential sense, meaning, of course, time and space are real things in how we experience them and interact with them. But what I mean by real is I'm saying space and time are not ontologically fundamental. They're not foundational. They're not all that there is, meaning reality and existence doesn't stop at space and time. There is something greater as the whole. And physics proves this already. Physics has already proven this. But yet, modern academia and science is dragging their feet to really present the implications of a lot of the things they're finding in their research and their studies. So we're going to get to it, okay? So space-time is not fundamental. What's the one major thing that already proved this? It was Einstein, who's apparently a genius, right? The defining characteristic of genius, you have relativity. Theory of relativity, no universal clock, no absolute now, present, time, dilation, depending on where you are, depending on the gravitational geometry of your space. So theory of relativity already proved that space and time act differently depending on where you are. So there's no objective external space and time separate from your location. It depends on where you are in the universe. It's not consistent. Fundamental time, if space and time were fundamental, it'd have to be consistent, universal. It can't be dependent on the place or the mass or the speed that you're going at. Space-time bends, it warps, it varies, aka it depends, like I already said. Foundation must be stable, secure, responds, distorts the contents, meaning the foundation of reality, the true foundation of reality, needs to be consistent because it contains everything that is happening within our experience, within reality as we know it currently. There's the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which is posited as a physics equation, but it's pure math, and it's at the core. It's like one of the more fundamental equations, mathematical equations in physics, I think actually the most fundamental to bridge general relativity and quantum mechanics. But at the base, there is no time. It's timeless. It can go in both directions as well. Quantum mechanics is showing this as well, that space and time are relative, up for discussion, negotiable, right? But the foundation of reality, the fundamental foundation, the ontological ground, needs to be non-negotiable. It needs to be persistent. Otherwise, everything would be in a state of flux, it'd be chaos, and there would be no coherent experience to enjoy. The fact that we are experiencing a coherent, intelligible reality means that the ground is solid and consistent and stable. This is why we can even practice things like physics or psychology or biology, because the rules are persistent over time. Events generate the experience of time. So entanglement, spooky action at a distance, right? You have two particles that are entangled. They could be light years away, and they seem to be in sync with each other. They seem to be resonating with the same source of information. So something's happening. This is proven by Bell's theorem. Something's happening outside of space-time, because it can't be something happening within space-time that is causing this entanglement because of the speed of light, because information can't traverse faster than the speed of light across the universe, across space and time as we know it. So that means there's something happening outside of space-time, of three-dimensional reality, that is interacting with these particles and entangling them in some way, okay? Time is relational, not fundamental. Timeless block universe. So a lot of physicists, I believe Sean Carroll is one of them, he's one of the more popular ones, a lot of physicists are now positing this idea of a block universe. Maybe Einstein, I think, was also arguing this as well, but I'm not certain. This block universe, which is what I agree with, right? Everything's happening simultaneously, 4D reality, right? Where time is an aspect of the physical space. Kind of like if you've ever seen Interstellar, right? You can move across time almost like it's a room. Different rooms have different timelines, if you will. So the timeless block universe is more consistent with what we see in physics, but also just if you use your rational, logical mind, rational, logical faculties. So we have the photon. Photon is another example of why space and time cannot be fundamental, cannot be the ontological ground, meaning that there has to be something beyond space and time that exists, that persists. Photon, most fundamental particle, right? Zero time, zero spatial distance, zero space-time intervals. Defies space-time being fundamental, okay? Photons are kind of doing whatever the fuck they want. They're free particles, they're free roaming, they're moving around, they operate at the boundary. All measurements in physics terminate in photon detection, meaning these measurements bottom out. Things within the manifold, like temperature or heat or energy, cannot reach absolute zero. You can never reach absolute cold, zero cold, right? Because that means it wouldn't exist. Things that have reached absolute zero cold are not in three-dimensional space. They're not within the manifold. Well, photons are this interesting exception, okay? And this is because photons set the boundary. They exist at the boundary. Light. Photons are the one exception. It is where the manifold ends, and at the end, the boundary of 3D reality. This is why photons defy what we understand in physics. They defy what we understand in classical physics. Linear time, they're kind of going all over the place, right? They're retrocausality in a way. You got the double slit experiments, you got entanglements, right? Photons are popping in and out of existence when they're observed by an intentional aperture, by a measurement tool or a conscious observer. So photons are really defying what we know, right? And again, if we think three-dimensional space, if we think space-time is truly fundamental, that means that you have strong emergence. That means that you have photons popping in and out of existence or coming out of nothing. So you get something from nothing every single time a photon comes into existence. You have a photon coming out of existence, an electron coming out of existence and popping back onto a higher realm when they're emitting photons or when they're absorbing photons. They're teleporting. But instead of teleporting, going somewhere else and coming back in, you're saying they're leaving existence entirely, they're being destroyed and then created again. No, it's just that space-time isn't fundamental. It's really that simple. There's something greater. There's higher dimensions. There's higher realms of reality. And then you also have c, which is essentially the speed limit for all of 3D manifest creation, speed of light. But it's actually really not the speed, it's the limit of causation and effect, cause and effect in 3D spacetime. Nothing, information can't travel, gravity can't travel, nothing can travel through spacetime faster. And really what's travel through, it's propagate. Nothing can propagate through three-dimensional space faster than the speed of light. It sets the propagation speed. And this C, little guy, defines almost all rules for patterns within spacetime. It's a fundamental cosmological constant that defines a lot of how our reality works in a manifest way. Not to mention that, we're not going to get too deep into this in this video. Matter is light and light is matter. E equals mc squared. Energy is matter. Everything's in a state of flux. And at the base, the most fundamental component of that is photons. So all matter is light under different layers and levels of constraint. Okay? But I'm going to go deeper in that in another video. So then you have this circularity, right? So if space-time is not fundamental, like where did it come from? What's going on? Big Bang, how was the universe created? All that good stuff. So you do have this theory that certain physicists will posit that says space-time emerges from quantum patterns. So space-time is an emergent thing. Unfortunately for them, for physicists, emerges presupposes linear space-time. You need time to emerge and you need space to emerge from. So there's no time to emerge and no space to emerge from. Space-time can't be emergent, strongly emergent, meaning it can't come from nothing, because for something to come from something, you need time and you need space. The space to even come into something and to come from something. So it defies logic. It defies just coherent intelligibility to believe that space-time is emergent, especially from quantum patterns. Also a quantum patterns occur through time. You need time for patterns. And this leads to a fundamental problem when you have physicists trying to study the origins of space-time. The reason why they can't do it through physics is because physics language presupposes space-time. Physics is in empirical science. It's all about observations and experiments. That requires linear time, and it operates within space. So physics is tracking the patterns within space-time that operate under linear time, right? They can't fully explain the container because they're only explaining the patterns within the container. They say particles interact, entropy accumulates, measurements happen, fields fluctuate. These are all linear time. This is all supposing before and after. So it's circular grounding. Physics can't talk about fully and extrapolate fully the thing that it needs to exist, which is linear spacetime. You can't use patterns in spacetime to fully explain spacetime itself. All patterns presuppose spacetime. You can't do physics outside of spacetime. Empirical evidence needs spacetime. Only logic, math, and awareness transcend spacetime. So your consciousness can transcend, your thoughts, your awareness, that can transcend spacetime. Using logic and math equations, that's what the Wheeler-DeWitt equation did. Okay? Those are the things that you can use to transcend spacetime, but the empirical sciences will always just be explanations of the manifold, of things happening within three-dimensional space-time, not outside of three-dimensional space-time. And this is a big reason why space-time being fundamental is not posited by everybody, and just not mainstream news, is because physics can't operate outside of three-dimensional space-time. Math can, the math they use can do that, but the actual applied physics of it cannot. Structures are within the container. The spectrum. So space-time can emerge from non-space-time. That leaves us with a problem, right? So strongly emerge, right? So where did it come from? What is space-time? Because now it seems like, okay, well, if space-time didn't emerge, like how does that work? Well, the container itself, what I call the infinite conscious substrate, some people call it God, some people call it just the universe, Brahman, Atman, whatever you want to call it. So you have infinite timeless universe substrate, and 3D space-time exists on a spectrum, meaning that think of it like an ocean, right? Ocean that's timeless, there's no time. And space and time are the same thing seen from different perspectives. It's just measured in different components. But space and time are inextricably linked. You cannot separate the two. As soon as you get finite form, you get time. As soon as you get time, you have finite form. So the infinite universe creation, again, whatever you want to call it, that is timeless. And then as soon as it gets constrained into a finite mode, like say a wave, that's when time happens. Time and space connected. And space is only a thing if there's a contained, right? Space, right? So there's a container, there's restriction, there's constraint. Space-time exists on a spectrum. Fundamental foundation of reality is non-spatial, non-temporal, non-local, all at once. Everything's happening all at once. You ever seen the movie Everywhere, All at Once? Now, or I think it's Everywhere, Everything, All at Once, or something like that. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Now, obviously, that movie is actually in linear time, so it's not all simultaneous, but at its core, it's all happening right now in the present. It's all one thing, one jambalaya of existence. Anything you can possibly imagine is happening somewhere, some way in this ocean of existence. Linear spacetime only exists for finite apertures entities. So linear spacetime exists for us, but that's why it's relative, because it's not separate from us. We are part of it. It's a dance. It's an interactive game that we're playing in existence. So more constraint equals more bounded by linear spacetime. Less constraint equals less bounded by linear spacetime. Space and time is the experience of a finite being within the infinite timeless universe, God creation, whatever floats your boat. So you're saying, okay, less constraint equals more simultaneity, less bounded by linear spacetime, more transcendent, and then more constrained is more bounded by spacetime. So just to give you a quick example, the thing in three-dimensional space that is most bounded by space and time, linear space and time, that's most constrained would be minerals, be rocks, okay? These are the contain the least amount of consciousness, or not contains the least amount of consciousness, but the consciousness is most constrained. So they're more bound by space and time. They evolve over millions of years, right? To evolve takes a lot more time. One of the more less constrained is humans. Humans experience things more simultaneously than, say, a plant or, say, a dog or animals or obviously a rock, right? The evolution happens a lot more rapidly, okay? But this still could maybe be a little vague, a little confusing, so I'm going to give you an example that you can directly relate with, which I know for a fact you have experienced this in your own life because everyone has. All right? So this is going to be directly verifiable, direct experience. This is what we're basing it off of. So suffering. Suffering is separation and contraction. This is when the aperture narrows. Time drags, space closes in. You have restriction. So think about an example, a time in your life where you went through immense suffering. Hopefully I'm not triggering something, so maybe we can make it a little bit lighter. Say you're doing a plank, or you're doing push-ups, or you're doing wall sits, or you're doing a very difficult exercise that is very exhausting and tiring. Say you're doing that for 30 minutes, doing a wall sit, a plank, push-ups for 30 minutes. That's a lot, right? It's excruciating. Every minute is crawling. You feel every second. You are just counting down the seconds, the minutes to the end so you can take a break, get some relief. Or say if you're really hungry or something, every minute is you're feeling that hunger, you're feeling that discomfort, that suffering, that pain, right? Or if you're going through pain or abuse or whatever it is, trauma, the time is dragging on. You are very much bound by every single second in that moment. Now let's compare it to the exact opposite, joy, especially when you're a kid, you're having fun, you're at a birthday party. Expansion and openness, aperture widens, time flies, space opens up, there's relaxation, there's congruence, things are happening more simultaneously. You're like, where did the time go? Now there's 30 minutes that I just said, right? With the wall sits, the push-ups. Now you're with your friends in front of your favorite show, eating your favorite food. How fast would that go by? Like that. Hopefully this video is going by fast because you're having a blast. Maybe not. But that's the point, right? So joy is all about expansiveness, openness. And so when you cut up time too, this is bidirectional. When you cut up time, right? When you're more focused on time, more suffering, more openness, greater attention span, more joy, more bliss, more presence. So think about that too when it comes to the way that we're being trained to lose our attention, to have shorter and shorter attention spans. It's leading to more and more suffering, more and more discomfort. But that's also another video at another time. So stick around, subscribe if you want to continue going down the rabbit hole with me. So this is not just subjective time. So people say, oh, okay, well, that's cool that you just gave that example, but that's subjective. Like that's my personal experience. That's not real time. But that's my point of the entire video. There's no real time. Everything's real, but not fundamentally real necessarily. Clock time is also subjective when compared to the universe, right? Our time is based off of the solar system, the path of the sun across the sky. That's how we determine time. That's not universal time. There's no universal time for everyone in the universe. Our solar system is determined by, it's our sun pretty much that determines our time of the day and of the year, tracking it. We used to do the moon for the months, but we changed that for particular reasons. Again, I'm not going to get into. So everything already exists simultaneously. Different parts light up. You want to think about it like a neon sign, right? Huge neon sign, which is the universe or all of creation, and everything is there in latent form, and then awareness lights up the different things. So when you see a neon sign and you see eat Bob's Burgers, they're delicious, the words were always there. It's just getting lit up at different points. It appears like something's being created, something new is happening, but it's not really new. That makes sense. So again, everything's happening simultaneously. It's only when awareness crosses that particular aspect of creation that it feels like a linear experience. This is why synchronicities or premonitions, intuitions, intuitive downloads, deja vu, time can feel interesting and different, especially if you're doing psychedelics or especially when you're a kid where time just flies by because you're more open, you have a wider aperture. Right? In the middle of life, midlife, time moves by slower, you're really feeling it. Okay? And so the arrow is reversed. So all space-time experience is subjective, right? No external, real, objective space-time separate from you, independent from you. It's all relative. So the experience of space-time is real. That's real. I'm real. You're real. Space and time are real technically, but not ontologically, fundamentally, which is how most people think about it. They think there's a separate space, a separate time out there. There's a cosmic universal clock. Matter and reality are just hard, set. No, not the case. All physical patterns are grounded in consciousness, the presence of experience, which is what consciousness is. So physicists, the way that they see reality, they say you have physical structures, then you have patterns, then you have interactions, then emergent time, then consciousness, which makes, again, no sense because you need emergent time. This is the linear time. Structure, patterns, these also presuppose linear time being fundamental. Now, in my framework, cosmic, in my framework with the conscious substrate monism, you have the conscious substrate, you have constraint, finite apertures, spatiotemporal experience, and then locality linear sequence. Now, again, with the ocean, the waves analogy, there's all these waves happening, but this is not across linear time. Space and time are not fundamental. It's like the block universe, which some physicists do present, and I agree with them completely. The time only happens once form is happening. And then when the wave crashes down, it's back to timelessness. Okay? And it's constantly that dance. Conscious experience under constraint is what space-time actually is. It's conscious experience under constraint as a finite mode. That's what space-time is. Timeless, infinite awareness at the base, at the root, foundation, and then weakly emergent space and time, three-dimensional space. Hopefully that was interesting for you. I appreciate your time. Love to hear your thoughts, whether you agreed or disagreed, or I don't know, have some wisdom you would like to share. I always like to hear your guys' wisdom. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.